Still as a breeze, a river flowing deep. Don't wanna leave the air you breathe. Living me dreams when I think of you and me. Don't wanna leave the world you see, and I will hold you down if love is still alive. It's all forgiven to my eyes. The tide has turned around. Just listen to the sound. Two hearts beating, beating time. Hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah. It's all forgiven to my eyes. Hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah, hey yeah. It's all forgiven. You and your wicked ways.
When I was 15 years old, still living at home with my family, we all went on a family holiday to Tunisia. Sousse was the tourist area we visited for 2 weeks in about 1973. I was still shy, but had become very tall and slim. I had a hairstyle that was called feathered a la Ziggy Stardust. I had also become good at sport quite suddenly. At school, every PE lesson began with us having to run the circumference of the giant rec or field across the road from our school, on Reddings Lane in Yardley area, Birmingham. A boy called David Miller always won the run. One day, running around this hated field, I suddenly felt that this was actually easier than I had previously felt, and I beat Miller to finish first. I'm not sure if I or the PE teacher were more surprised. That, I guess, started my sporting career. Physical education was often a torrid affair back in the early 70s, with little overview of teachers' antics. I remember that those who forgot their kit were referred to as the sick, lame and lazy, and were forced to run around the rugby or hockey field, wearing almost nothing but their birthday suits. Our PE teacher was called Mr. Horrocks, and he regularly allowed our posteriors to encounter his hand or a plimsoll for various minor infringements. These events were often ritualized and with an audience of the entire class. He also had a whistle on a thick red string with which he would officiate games, but also he used it as a goad to force the aforesaid sick, lame, and lazy to improve their efforts in running around the perimeter of the field, usually for the entire session. He was not the most popular of teachers, as you can imagine. The holiday in Sousse was awkward for me in several ways that I did not expect, but ultimately taught me a very, very important lesson or two. I'm sure you also remember the holiday hotels at this time in history had a very large eating area where breakfast, lunch, and dinner were all in with the cost. My mother was a conversationalist and enjoyed meeting with other families and talking to the Tunisian waiters, who were very friendly. She, like many mothers, I'm sure, had a habit of talking about me as if I was either deaf or retarded, or in fact, not even there. Oh, he's 15 now, but his 16th birthday is in 2 days. Yes, he is tall, she said to another family who had a daughter a bit older than me, and was the owner of tits, which made her very interesting to me. I think her name was Judith. Stand up, David. Show them how tall you are, my mother says, not only in front of the girl but the entire room of diners one evening. I was cajoled into obliging her. Mothers could be very embarrassing when one is 15 going on 16. We met a few other families, including an ex-mounted policeman who had gone wrong. He was often telling me to do something about this girl called Judith. He drank a lot and smuggled a bottle of Canadian Club into a nightclub we all went one night. My mother kept nudging me and whispering, go on, ask her to dance. You can imagine how fantastic that felt. But I waited until the music changed and stood up to ask Judith to dance. I mentioned how tall I was, and the big lamps over the table were not very high. Before I could speak, my head hit the lamp. Bong! I missed the chance because some Tunisian asked her to dance before I could gather myself. Disaster. During dinner one afternoon, a waiter who seemed to serve our table often offered to take me to a zoo in the area. Before I could defer, my mother said, "That would be perfect, wouldn't it?" So I was trapped. The next day I met the waiter, and using local buses visited the zoo, which, by the way, was ordinary. The waiter was taking dozens of pictures, and it took a little time for me to notice the pictures were all of me at the monkey cage, me at the giraffe enclosure, etc. I began to get a distasteful feeling and said I needed to go back after an hour or so. Meanwhile, I was riding the horses for rent on the beach. I was /am a good horseman, and so had good fun on some of the Arab horses who were surprisingly spirited, not like beachside donkeys. During my riding about, and in fact, in any place I went, the waiters and staff from the hotel were very friendly, too friendly, and again I began to feel uncomfortable. Then came the night. The manager of the hotel was a Tunisian named Camel, and he said he would take me to a bar in a posh hotel further down the beach. I had a rented moped, and he sat on the back, behind me, uncomfortably close. When we got to this swinging hotspot, he paid for the drinks, and I got pretty drunk. Close by, some girls and other tourists were watching a show in which a man was charming a live cobra, which swayed and hissed within a few feet of the audience. Being full of Dutch courage, I invited myself to sit between two Swedish girls. One was very beautiful and named Yanni, I remember. I was brash, and I began with talking to them, and then I began kissing both of them and biting them in the way the snake would do so, I said. I was being funny and making them laugh, but they kissed me back in return. It was so much fun that they loved the attention. I spent hours playing games with the girls, and not only was I literally drunk, but I was drunk on their attention too. I don't remember how I got home, but I had realized by now that these Tunisians had sexual desires towards me, and I noticed that Camel was pissed off when I stayed all night with the Swedish girls. The next day I went riding down the beach, and Yanni and her friend were sunbathing in bikinis. They were as excited as I was to meet again, and I will never forget one of them say, "Oh, look, it's the crazy Englishman," and giggled deliciously. In that very moment I had a thought that has stayed with me for most of my life. The Swedish girls had not responded to caution or hesitation. They had responded to nerve, to cheek, to flirting, to taking a chance, to stepping forward rather than hanging back. It came to me like a revelation. That is how men behave. I felt like I had found hidden gold, or a light bulb had blinked on in my mind. Because I was very young looking, these waiters had been interested in me. After that night they left me alone because I was with the girls. I never met those girls after the holiday, but I owe them a lot. A hidden piece of the map. After that night I carried myself differently, because for the first time I believed I understood something about the kind of man I wanted to be, and how to be it.